The emergency alarm echoed through the massive halls of the Galactic Council chambers for the 7th time this month. Ambassador Vethkar's forearms trembled as he read the latest transmission from the Outer Rim colonies. Another Rillan mining world had gone completely silent. "Sir, we've lost contact with mining station Theta-7, reported his aide, voice shaking. "That makes 12 colonies in 3 weeks. Vethkar stared at the holographic display, showing the devastation. What remained of the once thriving Rillan settlements looked like someone had taken a massive crystal grater to entire planets. Mining equipment was shredded, the habitation domes cracked open like eggs, and worst of all, no survivors. The crystalline entities had appeared without warning 6 months ago. They moved through space like living glass storms, their bodies reflecting starlight in beautiful but terrifying patterns. Every weapon the Council possessed, plasma cannons, quantum disruptors, even antimatter charges, passed right through them like they were shooting at shadows. "What about the rescue fleets?" Vethkar asked, though he already dreaded the answer. "Fleet Admiral Zexthar's task force. Complete loss, sir. All 847 ships and 12,000 crew members. The crystalline swarm didn't even slow down. That brought the total 3 entire fleets wiped out attempting rescue operations. The best military minds in the galaxy had tried everything. Coordinated attacks, defensive formations, even retreating and nooking entire asteroid fields. Nothing worked. The creatures seemed to feed on the energy weapons, growing larger and more aggressive with each battle. The council chambers buzzed with panicked conversations in dozens of alien languages. Representatives from 200 species debated frantically, but Vethkar knew they were running out of options. The crystalline threat was spreading, consuming more worlds every day. Then someone mentioned the unthinkable. "What about the Deathworlders?" whispered Counselor Yithrin from across the chamber. The entire room fell silent. Every species present had heard the stories about Earth, a nightmare planet where everything tried to kill everything else. The humans who came from that world were equally terrifying. They fought wars for centuries, survived disasters that would end civilizations, and somehow thrived in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. Vethkar's stomach twisted at the thought. Asking humans for help meant admitting that the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were helpless. It meant inviting those savage bipeds into their space, trusting them with their most vulnerable colonies. But as another distress signal arrived from the dying Rylan worlds, Vethkar realized they had no choice left. The monsters were winning, and only monsters could stop monsters. The council chamber erupted in chaos when Vethkar announced his decision. Representatives from dozens of species shouted in protest, their translator devices struggling to keep up with the flood of angry voices. "You cannot be serious about contacting those savages," screamed Counselor Yithrin, her tentacles waving frantically. "The humans are more dangerous than the crystalline threat. They eat their own dead," added another representative. "They wage war for entertainment." Vethkar ignored the protests and activated the long-range communication array. His hands shook as he entered the coordinates for Earth's diplomatic frequency. Every instinct told him this was madness. But watching entire colonies disappear had pushed him past caring about instincts. The transmission took 3 hours to reach. Earth Vethkar expected weeks of negotiations, committees, and bureaucratic delays. That's how civilized species handled crises, with careful planning and endless discussions. "Commander." Jin Park answered the call in less than 10 minutes. The human appeared on the holographic display, and Vethkar had to fight every urge. To flee? Jin looked exactly like the terrifying descriptions. Sharp features, predator eyes that seemed to see everything, and that unsettling calm that humans displayed before violence. But when Vethkar explained the situation, something unexpected happened. Jin didn't ask about payment. He didn't demand territorial concessions or trade agreements. He didn't even ask for time to consult his superiors. How many survivors need evacuation? Jin asked immediately. We estimate perhaps 50,000 Rylands trapped on the remaining colonies, Vethkar stammered. Understood. We'll mobilize immediately. Send us the coordinates. The call ended. Just like that. Vethkar stared at the empty hologram, wondering if he'd misunderstood something. Where were the negotiations? The demands? The weeks of planning? While the council spent the next month arguing about logistics, supply lines, and proper military protocols, reports began flooding in from Earth's sector. Human shipyards worked around the clock. Cargo vessels were retrofitted as troop transports. Battlecruisers that had been in maintenance were rushed back into service. 72 hours after that first call, long-range sensors detected a massive human fleet jumping into hyperspace, heading directly for the crisis zone. Impossible, whispered Fleet Admiral Zextor, studying the readings. No civilization can mobilize that quickly. They're sending over 200 ships. But what shocked the council most wasn't the speed. It was the message Jin sent as his fleet departed. Help is coming. Hold on. No species had ever rushed to aid strangers this quickly. The humans were either completely insane, or they understood something about survival that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The UES Thunder dropped out of hyperspace with a bone-rattling shudder that would have terrified most alien crews. Captain Han Kim didn't even flinch as sparks flew from overloaded systems around the bridge. His dark eyes immediately locked onto the tactical display, showing the nightmare ahead. Jesus Christ, whispered Lieutenant Sol-Young from the navigation station. Look at the size of that thing. The crystalline entity attacking the last Ryland colony ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of their largest battlecruiser. It sparkled like a deadly rainbow as it tore through the colony ship's hull, with appendages that looked like living glass spears. The Ryland vessel was already venting atmosphere and debris. Sir, we're receiving a distress call, reported communications Officer Park Jin. The colony ship has maybe 15 minutes before complete hull breach. They've got 8,000 civilians on board. Any other species would have taken time to analyze the threat, form a battle plan, maybe call for reinforcements. Han Kim looked at his tactical officer instead. How fast can we get our Marines over there? Captain, that's suicide, protested his first officer. We don't even know how their weapons work yet. Those people will be dead in 15 minutes, Han replied calmly. We don't have time for analysis. He opened fleet communications. All ships, this is Thunder Actual. Launch all rescue shuttles immediately. Marines, prep for combat boarding operations. We're going in hot. The response was instant. Across the human fleet, bay doors opened and small attack shuttles screamed toward the dying colony ship. Marine Sergeant Kim Min-jin led the first wave. His squad armed with everything from plasma rifles to old-fashioned explosive charges. Remember, Han announced over the comm, we're not here to study these things. We're here to save lives. The crystalline entity noticed the approaching humans and turned several of its weapon arms toward them. Beams of pure energy lanced out. But the human pilots had learned from previous wars. They zigzagged unpredictably, used debris as cover, and when one shuttle got hit, the pilot didn't retreat. He rammed his crippled craft straight into the creature's sensor cluster. Marines away, Sergeant Kim reported, as his teams began cutting through the colony ship's damaged hull. We're going in. While the entity was distracted by the boarding operations, Captain Han ordered his main guns to open fire. The human weapons didn't seem to hurt the creature much, but they got its attention. Keep it focused on us, Han commanded. Give the Marines time to work. The rescue had begun. Lieutenant Na Shin kicked open the airlock door and immediately felt the violent rush of escaping atmosphere. The Ryland colony ship was dying around them, metal groaning and sparking as the crystalline entity continued its assault from outside. Most species would have turned back at this point, but nah. Shin just sealed his helmet and pushed forward. Stay tight, people, he shouted over the come to his team. We've got civilians trapped in Section C. Behind him, Marines, Kim Woo, Lee, Jun, and Park Min followed without question. Even though the corridor ahead was a nightmare of twisted metal and floating debris, the artificial gravity flickered on and off, making their stomachs lurch as they pushed deeper into the ship. From his command post, Council Observer Vex Thani watched the human boarding operation through the ship's remaining cameras. His species had evolved on a peaceful garden world where the worst threat was a mild rainstorm. What he was seeing now defied all logic. They're fighting in a decompressed section, he whispered to his aide. The hull is collapsing around them, but the humans didn't seem to care. When a section of the ceiling crashed down, blocking their path, Marine Lee Jun simply pulled out what looked like a primitive explosive charge and blew a hole through the wall. When their route filled with toxic gas from a ruptured chemical line, they switched to emergency oxygen and kept moving. Contact. We've got one of those crystal things in the hallway. Na Shin's voice crackled through the comm. The crystalline creature had somehow gotten inside the ship, its razor-sharp appendages cutting through bulkheads like butter. It moved with perfect, calculated precision, the way predators from orderly worlds always moved. But Na Shin didn't move like an orderly predator. He dove sideways through a hole in the wall, rolled behind some debris, and opened fire with short, controlled bursts. When the creature tried to predict his next position, Marine Kim Woo attacked from the opposite direction. When it adapted to that pattern, Parkman dropped down from an air vent above. The crystalline entity's movements became increasingly erratic. It was designed to fight logical, predictable enemies who followed proper military tactics. These humans fought like controlled chaos, following no pattern, using the environment as a weapon, and absolutely refusing to retreat, even when the situation seemed hopeless. We've got the civilians, Na Shin reported, leading a group of terrified Rillan families toward the extraction point. Moving to evac now. Observer Vex Thani realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. These humans weren't just brave, they were completely unpredictable. And somehow, that randomness was their greatest weapon. Chief Engineer Min Cho was the kind of person who took apart electronics as a kid just to see how they worked. Now, floating in a damaged reconnaissance pod just 50 meters from a crystalline entity, he was doing the same thing with an alien weapon system. Min, get out of there. Captain Han's voice crackled through the comm. That thing could turn around any second. Just give me 30 more seconds, Min whispered, adjusting his scanning equipment. The crystalline creature was feeding on a destroyed Council battleship, its body pulsing with absorbed energy. But something about the way it moved caught his attention. The entity wasn't randomly destroying the ship, it was targeting specific systems first. The quantum resonance chambers, the harmonic shield generators, the frequency-based communication arrays. All the most advanced technology that other species were so proud of. Holy shit, Min breathed as the readings came through. I think I know what these things eat. He barely escaped as the creature finished its meal and drifted away, leaving behind nothing but the ship's basic hull structure. Everything electronic, everything that operated on advanced energy frequencies, had been completely drained. Back on the Thunder, Min spread his findings across the tactical display. Look at this pattern, he said, pointing to the energy readings. These things don't just attack randomly. They're drawn to harmonic frequencies. The more sophisticated the technology, the more it attracts them. So our fancy alien allies have been ringing the dinner bell this whole time, observed Lieutenant So Young. Exactly, their quantum weapons. Energy shields. All of it just makes the creatures stronger. But look at this. Min pulled up the scan of human weapons firing on the entities. Our chemical explosives, kinetic rounds, old-fashioned rockets, they barely show up on their sensors. Captain Han studied the data with growing excitement. They can't feed on gunpowder and metal slugs. Gets better, Min continued. I've been checking our mining equipment manifests. We've got industrial plasma cutters, demolition charges, even some old-style nuclear warheads in storage. None of it uses the harmonic frequencies these things crave. Within hours, human engineers across the fleet began retrofitting their weapons. Mining lasers became ship-mounted cutters. Construction explosives were loaded into missile warheads. Even their basic welding torches were weaponized. The Council thinks we're primitive because we still use chemical propellants and solid projectiles, Captain Han told his crew. Turns out, sometimes primitive is exactly what you need. The crystalline entities had evolved to counter the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They had never encountered a species that still fought wars with what amounted to controlled explosions and flying metal. Captain Yoon Lee stared at the tactical display showing 3 massive crystalline entities approaching the outer mining stations. His fleet consisted of 2 beat-up cargo haulers, a mining vessel, and a half-broken escort frigate. Any sane military commander would have retreated immediately. "All right, people, here's the plan," Yoon announced to his mixed crew of pilots and engineers. "We're going to hit them where they don't expect it." Pilot Oh Jinwoo raised his hand from the cargo ship Lucky Dragon. "Sir, with respect, they're 50 times our size. Where exactly don't they expect to be hit?" "Everywhere at once," Yoon grinned. "These things think like a computer. They expect organized attacks from predictable directions. We're going to give them chaos instead." The human plan was simple insanity. Instead of forming battle lines like proper fleets, they split up and approached from 6 different angles. The cargo ships had been fitted with mining charges and construction explosives. The mining vessel carried industrial plasma cutters that could slice through asteroid rock. "Dragon, you take the left flank," Yoon commanded. "Come in low and fast, then veer off at the last second. Ghost Runner, hit them from above with everything you've got, then get out of there." The crystalline entities moved to intercept, their formations perfect and calculated. They positioned themselves to counter a traditional fleet attack, weapons charging in synchronized patterns. But the humans didn't attack traditionally. Jinwoo screamed. The Lucky Dragon straight at the largest entity, launched every explosive he carried, then yanked his ship into a spin that would have killed any other species. The entity's weapons tracked where he should have gone, not where his crazy maneuvers actually took him. "This is insane," laughed engineer Kim Sora over the cum as her mining ship carved chunks off another creature with industrial equipment, never meant for combat. When pilot Park Hyen's escort frigate took critical damage, he didn't retreat. "Ejection pods ready," he announced calmly, then aimed his dying ship straight at the enemy formation. Double quotes, "Hyun, what are you doing?" Yoon shouted, making them flinch. Park replied, hitting the ejection button as his ship slammed into the crystalline entity at full speed. The explosions scattered the creature's formation. For the first time, the hive mind seemed confused. Its perfect coordination broken by an attack it couldn't predict or counter. The human fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. They had proven something important. These entities could be beaten, but only by fighting like humans. Deep in the Kepler asteroid field, the human reconnaissance team found what they were looking for. Engineer Lee Daeho stared at his scanner readings, then checked them again to make sure he wasn't seeing things. "Command, this is Scout 7, he radioed back to the fleet. "You're not going to believe this. The asteroid they'd been tracking wasn't rock at all. It was a crystalline organism the size of a small moon, its surface pulsing with stolen energy from dozens of destroyed worlds. Smaller entities swarmed around it like antibodies, feeding it resources and information. "That's the source, Commander," Sobek said grimly, as the full fleet gathered at a safe distance. "Take out that thing, and the whole network collapses." The problem was obvious to everyone looking at the tactical display. The superorganism was protected by layers of defensive entities, hidden in an asteroid field that would tear apart any normal attack formation. Even if they could reach it, the amount of firepower needed would require getting close enough to be destroyed by the blast. It's a suicide mission, stated Captain Yoon Lee bluntly. Half our ships won't make it through the field. The other half won't survive the final assault. That's when the Ryland survivors spoke up. Through the communication link, Elder Vithanes' voice trembled with emotion. Please, humans, the old Ryland begged. You have done so much for us already. We cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves for our worlds. Find another way. There must be another way. Commander Sobek looked around at his officers. These were career military people who understood the odds. They knew this operation would cost most of their lives. But not one of them suggested retreat. Elder Vithan, Sobek said softly into the communicator. My grandmother used to tell me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who you'd risk everything for, who you'd run toward danger to protect. He paused, looking out at the deadly beauty of the crystalline superorganism. The way I see it, you became our neighbors the moment you asked for help, and this is what neighbors do for each other. We don't walk away when things get dangerous. We don't calculate the costs. We just show up. The fleet began moving into attack formation. Every human aboard knew they might not see tomorrow, but they also knew something the crystalline entities would never understand. Some things were worth dying for. The final battle was about to begin. The asteroid field had become a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered crystal. Human ships weaved between the floating debris, their hulls scarred and burning as they pushed deeper toward the massive superorganism's core. Shields at 15%, shouted Lieutenant Park Min from the Thunder's bridge. We can't take much more of this. Captain Han Kim watched 3 more human vessels explode around them, their crews vaporizing in brilliant flashes. The crystalline defenders were throwing everything they had at the attackers, but the humans kept coming. Every ship lost meant fewer people to complete the mission, but retreat wasn't an option. Break through their final line, Han ordered. All ships, full speed. The remaining human fleet, now down to barely 30 vessels from the original 60, smashed through the last defensive barrier. Ahead lay the superorganism's heart, a pulsing core of stolen energy that powered the entire crystalline network. Engineer Min Cho's voice crackled through the comm. I've got the charges ready, but someone needs to plant them manually inside. That thing? The automated systems won't work. Too much electromagnetic interference. Everyone understood what that meant. Whoever went in wouldn't be coming back out. I'll do it, Captain Han said immediately. Sir, you can't. Lieutenant So Young started to protest. My ship, my call. Han cut her off gently. He opened fleet communications. All remaining vessels. This is Thunder Actual. Begin withdrawal to minimum safe distance. I'm going in alone. The protests came from every ship. But Han had already sealed the bridge and was piloting the Thunder toward the organism's core. The crystalline entity sensed the threat and focused all its remaining defenses on his single ship. Tell my wife. I kept my promise, Han radioed as his ship disappeared into the creature's interior. Tell her I came home a hero. The charges detonated 3 minutes later. The explosion tore through the superorganism's heart, sending shockwaves across the entire network. On planets throughout the sector, crystalline entities simply stopped moving. Their connection to the hive mind severed forever, but the victory celebration was muted. Of the 60 ships that had entered the battle, only 28 limped home. Over 3,000 human lives had been lost in the final assault. As the survivors regrouped, they received a message from every liberated world in the sector. The Rylands, and dozens of other species, were broadcasting the same thing. Thank you for showing us what real courage looks like. The war was over, but the galaxy would never forget the price humanity paid to win it. 6 months after the battle, Commander Jin Park stood in the memorial garden on New Relia, reading the names carved into black stone. Each name represented a human who had died fighting for people they'd never met, on worlds they'd never seen. The garden was beautiful. Rylan artists had created flowing sculptures that caught the light like frozen tears. Captain Han Kim. Jin read aloud, his finger tracing the carved letters. Lieutenant Nei Shin. Engineer Min Cho. The list went on for 3 walls. An elderly Rylan named Elder Vithan approached slowly, carrying a small crystal flower. "Every day, someone comes here," he said softly. "Children who were saved from the colony ships. Parents whose families survived because of your people. They leave flowers and tell stories about the humans who saved them." Similar gardens had appeared on every world the crystalline entities had threatened. The Trilaxians built theirs from singing stones that hummed lullabies. The Vorthan created holographic memorials that showed the last moments of human ships diving into enemy formations. But the real change came 3 months after the memorial services. When the Galactic Council held an emergency session, Ambassador Vethkar, the same alien who had first contacted Earth, stood before the assembly with a formal declaration. "The Council hereby designates humanity as official sector guardians," he announced. "They have proven that true strength comes not from advanced weapons or superior technology, but from the willingness to sacrifice for others." The term Deathworlders disappeared from official documents, replaced with protectors, or simply the humans who answer the call. New colonies began sprouting throughout the sector, joint settlements where humans and aliens worked side by side. On Kepler Station, human engineer Kim Ji-woo taught Rylan students how to build emergency shelters. On Haven Colony, Rylan botanist Dr. Yethfer helped humans grow crops in alien soil. But perhaps the most telling change came when the next crisis emerged, when the Zenthari Confederacy sent out a distress call about mysterious raiders attacking their trade routes. They didn't debate for weeks about who to contact. They called Earth first. Within hours, a human response fleet was already mobilizing. Not because they expected payment or territory, but because someone, somewhere, needed help. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When you needed someone to run toward danger instead of away from it, you called the humans, and they would always answer. The age of galactic cooperation had begun, built on the foundation of human sacrifice and the simple belief that neighbors help neighbors. No matter how far apart their worlds might be,